Thank you for joining us on the Winning and Selling Podcast. I'm Professor Scott Plum of the Minnesota Sales Institute, and with me is Bill Hellkamp of Reach Development Systems.
Some employees are fortunate to have their organizations provide a comprehensive and ongoing development program in which they can participate. But for many salespeople, and those of you who are solopreneurs, there is no comprehensive program. So what do? Well, if you're smart, you'll pay attention. As Scott and I discuss, take control of your own development on episode 574 of the Winning at Selling podcast.
I'm really looking forward to that topic, Bill. I think it's so true that there seems to be corporate America that offers support, and then most of the small businesses just don't have that training and development department. So I'm really looking forward to that topic.
Well, and some of us don't spend our time thinking about we need to continue our training and development. So let's talk about that after our book report, our book club.
Right. We're doing How to Win Friends and Influence People. Today, we're going to be talking about part 3, chapters 7, 8, and 9. And the first one, chapter 7, is how to get cooperation. The first sentence out of this chapter is, don't you have much more faith in ideas that you discover for yourself than in ideas that are handed to you on a silver platter?
Yep.
And I thought, boy, that is so true. And it just reminded me of the Blaise Pascal quote that I've used in many programs, many classes, and that is, people are more convinced by reasons they discover than ones told to them by others. And it's a good reminder, I think, for salespeople that people buy for their reasons, not ours. And we can really caught up on why we think they should buy when in reality, they need to discover it for themselves.
Well, this whole chapter, or part 3, not chapter, but the whole part 3 is how to win people to your way of thinking. I can't think of anything that's more important for salespeople than to try to help people move in a particular direction. We're supposed to be influencers, and that's what we're trying to do here. And asking questions and helping people see things when they have that aha moment that they need to make a change, they need to do something different, that what they're doing isn't working well. When it comes from them, it's a great idea. And when it comes from you, it's suspect.
Yeah.
Salespeople are always suspect, right?
Well, they're kind of, first of all, they're getting into an environment with a reputation associated with every other bad salesperson that ever crossed the path of the prospect. So we have to deal with that, and it takes a little bit of a sort of a pattern interrupt to kind of break that mindset from the prospect to think about the person that they're talking to, and to really do it in a persuasive way. I think talking about different ideas before you ask somebody to make a decision, it kind of gets them a chance to weigh different options that they can consider. And when you give people options, they feel like they're in control. And I think that's very influential when you're a salesperson, is you've got to make the prospect feel like they are in control.
And just look at your own personal life. How many times that we have people, if we tell them to do something, they're going to not do it. As a matter of fact, if my wife tells me to do something, I can't do it right then. Just can't do it. I just have to wait till it's not right when she told me. But I know that there's people in my life that I have to make a suggestion, and then 3 months later, they'll come back and say, I had this great idea that I ought to do this thing. I'm like, good. And then you have to resist the urge to say, yeah, I told you about that 3 months ago. Well, it's the same with customers or other people we're trying to influence. Don't try to take credit for it once they've discovered the idea you had all along.
Right. For some reason, I've been thinking about Hogan's Heroes and how manipulative Hogan was with Colonel Klink and Sergeant Schultz. And he always seemed to get them to do something that they didn't know they were doing. And it was just fascinating to watch. But we don't have shows like that. We do have some sort of shows like that, but it just, for some reason, I was
I was a big fan of Hogan's Heroes.
I loved Hogan's Heroes. So the principle for chapter 7 is let the other person feel that it was their idea. And when you do, I think it's a lot easier for them to take ownership of it, buy it, support it, and then that reduces the resistance that you have to deal with them.
Right.
So chapter 8, a formula that will work wonders for you. And this was the first line of this chapter was, remember that other people may be totally wrong. It's like, how many times are we at a social event, a networking event, a family function, and we're listening to somebody pontificate about a story? I mean, this happened this weekend as we were celebrating my mom's 80th birthday, and I'm in the car with a bunch of my siblings, and one sibling is telling a story about another sibling, and then I said, that's not exactly the way it happened. And she says, but it was my story. I'm the one that was there. I said, yeah, but you didn't tell it right. This is how it needs to be told. And I wasn't even there, but I'm telling my sibling that they're doing it wrong as to how they're explaining it. But
Well, that you said your siblings live their right lives wrong too, so
yeah,
you're
exactly.
the oldest. You have to help them.
And I'm always grateful that they do not listen to the podcast, so I don't have to worry about betraying any confidence. But we also have to think about in situations like that, when we correct people and there is nothing to win, there is no
Oh.
reason to correct them. And I love this Jordan Peterson quote, and he says, why take joy and happiness away from somebody when that's all they have? And boy,
Mm.
that hit me hard when I first heard that for the first time, because sometimes I can be a critical parent. I'm not a parent, but I can be a critical parent if you study transactional analysis. And that's because of my upbringing. I had a father that was very demanding and very critical, and I unfortunately picked up some of those bad habits. But I have to really hesitate on correcting people when I think that they're wrong.
We don't gain anything. There's
Right.
so often that we just want to be right.
Hmm.
And like in your example, who cares? Who
Right.
cares exactly how it happened? As a matter of fact, from their point of view, that's what they remember. And we don't need, as Jordan Peterson said, to take the joy away from people. Let them tell the story, let them be the hero, and don't correct it. I can't tell you the number of times I've been telling the story or something and somebody interrupts to correct a little thing that didn't matter. And I think, just leave me alone and let me tell the story here. So
Yeah. Yeah, why do they want to take the spotlight away, or why do they want to one up another person? And it's not really necessary. And just think about, what do you want people to know, and how do you want people to feel after
mm-hmm,
they talk with you?
mm-hmm.
And that's a reputation.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's just principle 8 is try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. And I think that's very accurate, and that really dwells on empathy. Customer empathy, I think, is the greatest strength that a person can have in a conversation, because it's a situation for you to see a person from their point of view.
Yeah.
Now, you need to be strong in that, and not be overly empathetic at the same time.
Yeah,
Chap-
and practice the great art of keeping your mouth shut once in a while.
mm-hmm.
You know.
Right. It's always amazing how the quiet one in a group always gets elected leader. You don't say anything, and all of a sudden you're elected the leader because everybody thinks you're smarter than
I've never been the
they
quiet one in the group, so I don't know what that's like.
are. I say enough just to get disqualified, and that's what I want to do. Anyway, chapter 9 is what everybody wants. And this chapter has a great dialogue about somebody correcting another person on an error that had nothing to gain from it. And it was just a very interesting story about how Dale Carnegie takes responsibility for a situation. And then this other person goes, no, 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 that's okay. That's totally understandable. I was just having a bad day. There are people that are having a bad day, and sometimes they're taking it out on you. So if you ever get that feeling like you're being attacked or something, look at a person and ask them, are you okay? Because they might be having a mild stroke at that very moment. And you don't really know where they're coming from. Have you met people like that, Bill?
Well, I think we've all been in that situation where we've had a certain mood, and then that mood carries over to another person. I remember a story that happened to me. I was in retail, and we're not always busy, so we were kind of sitting around talking about politics and arguing with one another. A nice old lady came into the store, wandered around a little bit, and then I asked her a question. We talked a little bit, and she said, I know you were arguing with your friends, but you don't need to be argumentative with me.
Mm,
And so we need to watch out that we have a feeling that then carries over from one event to someone else. So I
right.
think that's what I have to be careful of. I think we're getting off of this principle here because this is all about thinking about other people's ideas, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I think their ideas sometimes in a sales role, you have to be able to communicate value, and you want the other person to see the value in the product or service that you're offering. And that's in some cases is creating a new idea. It's creating a new option for somebody to think differently or think about a reason to change. I remember one time I was shopping for a roller bag because the Costco roller bag that I bought for $99 after spending 20 years with it finally collapsed. And a wheel blew out on it. I blew a wheel out of a roller bag. And I go in and I'm talking to somebody about replacing the wheel. And she says, I don't think I can get this wheel. I mean, this bag is 20 years old. I go, you're exactly right. And she says, I think you're going to have to look at what's new. And I go, okay, well, let's see what you got. So she brings me over and she puts this nice, Briggs and Riley bag up on a table, and she goes, feel how light that is, and then shows me all these other things. And I said, how much is it? And she said, $350. And I said, I'm not there yet. Keep going. She goes, what? I said, I don't see $350 worth of value. So keep going. I mean, a salesperson has got to say, oh, you don't see $350 worth of value? That's my fault. Let me continue. And I was helping her with that and giving her a chance to be able to bring up the idea from me, the prospect, that bag was worth $350. She never got there. She said, we are having a sale. I said, oh, really? So what's the bag worth then, or price? She said, 275. I said, that's worth 275 to me, but I bought the bag.
You
So
got there. You got there
I
by
didn't say that
discounting.
I didn't say that the price was too high. I just said, I'm not there yet. Keep going. And as salespeople, when prospects are fighting us on price, we need to turn to them and say, that's my fault. Thank you for giving me another chance to be able to explain the value that I'm offering, and then continue to ask them more questions. And eventually, if they're still standing there and you have a conversation, hopefully you'll find enough value in that conversation.
Well, and I think the question is, Scott, what do you need in a bag to make it be worth that?
Right.
I can't sell, I can't help you find an answer or a solution if I don't know what your ideas and desires are.
Yeah.
And
so
it's
true.
incumbent on me to not just start throwing mud on the wall. Let me show you all the great features of this roller bag or whatever it is I have to offer, unless I want to find out, how do you use this roller bag, and how much do you carry, and where do you use it, and why do you use it, and why don't you just carry a bag, and what's important to you? And in sales, we tend to not do that. We just want to start telling them all the great features and benefits of our product or service.
Yeah.
And we can't be sympathetic with their ideas and desires unless we ask.
You're right. Right. I mean, that's the principle of chapter 9. So be sympathetic to the other person's ideas and desires. So we're taking a break from the book, 2 weeks. On episode 576, we're going to be covering part 3, chapters 10, 11, and 12. So keep up, and give you some extra time to read those 3 chapters.
And no book club next week because we have a guest.
Right.
Every
right.
third week we try to have a guest. So that's excellent. All right. Thanks, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
So our topic today is take control of your own development. And Scott and I meet with salespeople all the time. And we get a note from you guys out there, our listeners, and they say, our organization doesn't do any training. And I need to grow and get better, but my organization doesn't offer anything, or they even almost discourage it, or we just don't do anything. And so we contact their sales manager and we attempt to have a conversation with them about growing their capabilities, but sometimes they do it and sometimes they don't. So we're disappointed. The person who contacted us is disappointed and says, our sales team isn't going to develop. And it doesn't have to end there. That's what this whole section is about.
Growth.
But you can take care of your own growth by creating and practicing a professional development plan, or PDP. Scott, do you have a PDP for yourself?
I do. It's in a shelf somewhere collecting dust. I haven't looked at it in a while, but I know that one day I was at a workshop and I filled out the form and I thought it was really cool. Sat on my desk for about a week and then I filed it.
Yeah, sometimes we're doing things that aren't formalized. Like, for example, Scott and I are reading about 4 to 5 books a year together during our book club. Well, that's part of a personal development plan. Now, if you're reading along with us, you have a partial personal development plan too. If you're just listening to us, well, it's less so. It's okay, but it could be better because you could be reading the book as well and getting your own insights into it before we have a conversation about it. If you're listening to our podcast every week, that's part of a personal development plan or a professional development plan, a PDP, because you've said, I'm going to listen to this podcast, or I'm going to listen to other podcasts, or I'm going to watch some videos. So you may have an informal one, but things don't get accomplished if we're just doing them informally, and we can't get better and work harder if we don't do that. Now, I've got some steps on doing this, Scott. Certainly want your input as to how you help other people develop these plans for themselves. And the first thing I do is a needs assessment. Whether it's an individual or an organization, we sit down, we talk to all the interested parties. We want to find out what areas do we need to work on. And I think that should be your first step as well if you're going to develop a professional development plan for yourself. So a couple things you can do. Analyze your sales failures and successes. You need to look at especially your failures. Why didn't I make that sale? What did I miss? What didn't I do? How did it go? What could I have done better? What could I have done differently? What did I not know what to do? Where did I fall down? Did I not know how to overcome their objection? Did I not know how to get to the person who is making the decision? What's the reason? And that can help you determine where you need to develop a little bit. You might want to spend some time talking to your sales leadership. What do you think I'm good at? What do you think I'm bad at? Where could I improve? And then you probably have 4 or 5 really good customers, people that have become friends of yours almost, that you could sit down and have a conversation about and say, what do you like about the way that I work with you to help solve your problems? And what don't you like the way? What could I be doing better? So those are just some suggestions on a needs assessment. Scott, anything else people can do?
Yeah, I like your idea of the assessment and really starting with kind of examining your conscience. The questions that I ask salespeople when I start working with them is, tell me about your greatest personal accomplishment. And it's always amazing when somebody goes back to their high school years and talks about the greatest personal
Long
accomplishment.
ago.
Yeah. And then I say, what's your professional greatest accomplishment professionally? And then they tell me that. And then I talk about, what do you want to achieve? And then I said, you obviously have a proven track record of being successful. So we really need to work on analyzing our past accomplishments and know that it is repeatable in future goals that we have. But we have achieved it, so we know we can do it.
Yeah, I think the idea is that just don't go randomly picking up a book or listening to a podcast. If you set a goal and you say, here's where I want to work, it's amazing how much great information starts to flow into you.
Mm-hmm.
But if everything is of equal importance, then it's very difficult to make change because there's too many things that you're trying to grow in. That's why I say go out and get better one skill at a time at the end of every episode that we have. And that's because I don't want you to try to work on 5 things at once. I want you to pick out something and then work on it. So that's the first step, is a needs assessment. The second one then is to set goals and prioritize them. What is it that I want to learn? Do I need to get better at closing? Do I need to get better at my phone calls to prospects? Do I need to get better at asking questions? What are the things that I want to get better at? So Scott, what are some of the ways that you would suggest people set professional goals?
I always think that in some cases, another person motivates us to be greater than who we are at the time. And I really believe in mentorship, and I really believe in having that person that you look up to and admire. And when somebody has accomplished that, you know that it's achievable. And in most cases, they will help direct you to get to the same level that they are. So I think, rule number 1 is to be able to find somebody who's done it and you can follow them. When I was in 8th grade, my mom gave me a violin and gave me violin lessons. Do you think I ever listened to a violinist use this instrument in such great joy that inspired me to want to play like that? No, never. But when I listen to somebody play the trumpet, I want to be just like them. So later on, I go out and I got trumpet lessons. There was a mentor there. There was somebody that inspired me to want to be like them. And I think that a person that you look up to can be a great guide.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, about a coach. And a mentor can be very important. Some of the areas that you might want to set goals in, obviously your work habits and your activities. What are you doing every day? Are you following some kind of a plan every day? Another area you could look in is your selling skills. As we talked about, can I close well? Can I overcome objections? Are there some areas in the sales process that I need to get better? As we're going through the how to win friends and influence people, it should be helping you think about your interpersonal skills. Do your clients like you? People like to buy from people they like. Are you a likable person? Or are you a miserable SOB? I don't want to. We've all bought from somebody that we didn't like because we had to. But they had to overcome that with either a lower price or something else that said, oh, I'm going to buy it anyway, even though I can't stand this person. So try to make it easy to buy from. Where are you investing in yourself and in your business? Is that an area that you could do? Maybe go out to more lunches or buy a book or do something. Now, I'm purposely not including other areas of life in this, like your faith life or recreation and working out or family life or weight loss or all those different things, because this is a professional development plan and I don't want to mix up the two. So if you're thinking to yourself, well, he's not doing a balanced thing. Well, that's right. I believe in getting out of balance every once in a while to be successful. And if you're failing at sales, the whole rest of your life is going to be out of balance if you're a salesperson. So you better get that thing right, and then you can start to balance other things out. Okay, step 3 then. So we have do a needs assessment, set some goals and prioritize them. Number 3, find some resources. Books. I'm looking at Scott on the video here. He's got 1,000 books behind him. So Scott, what are 1 or 2 books that you might recommend somebody getting started with if they want to get better in sales?
Oh, I love the books that we've done on the podcast. I love the Challenger Sale when we did that. Jan Canfield's book, the Success Principles. We've had Anthony Iannarino on twice. He's just a great author and great sales stuff that's relevant in today's marketplace. So I just really love all the knowledge that the authors that focus on developing salespeople have and the different perspectives, and it's validating to be able to read something that I do. And then it's also inspiring to read something that I don't do that I know that I should do.
Okay, great. Other things, podcasts. So if you're hearing us, you're listening to some podcasts, but make sure you're getting podcasts that are going to uplift you and help you be better in the areas you want to be in. So many videos on YouTube where if you have a specific issue that you want to work on, you can go to YouTube. And I might suggest a coach. And one of the problems that we have sometimes is that we don't have somebody that helps guide us, as Scott said, a mentor, somebody who can set that vision for us. We're going to talk about that more in detail in a moment. So finding resources, books, podcasts, videos, and a coach are some of the suggestions I have there, or maybe take a class of some kind that's more formalized. Step 4, develop a plan. So what am I going to do? How often am I going to do it? Which podcasts am I going to listen to? What areas am I going to work on? You need to set this plan with some numbers and some metrics on this, because you need to figure out how you're going to implement new activities or strategies. This is difficult to do. If it was easy to do, you'd already be doing it. So where you're working is in areas of weakness. And if you don't set a plan, if you don't set some numerical goals, if you don't measure and chart your progress, you're not going to get there. You need to push yourself in order to become better. If I'm a runner and I'm going to run 2 miles a day, let's say, I know that's not a lot for you big runners, but for me, that would be intense. If I'm going to run 2 miles a day, I have a route that I work out. I'm going to start timing myself, and maybe that route takes me 15 minutes day 1. So my goal is tomorrow, can I get it under 15 minutes? Can I get it to 14:45 and push myself? I know when I have run, I don't like to run, but when I have run, I'll set a milestone. I'll say, I'm going to run to that fire hydrant. And I'll get to that fire hydrant. I'll say, I can run 1 more house. I can run to that next tree before I stop and get a breather and walk a little bit. So you've got to push yourself to get better, or you're not going to get better. Thoughts on that, pushing yourself, Scott? Or
yeah, totally agree. Yeah, I think it's totally agree. I love that form of measurement because that's applicable in all kinds of areas. I did this when I was, working on my abs and doing the plank. I started off with 90 seconds, and then I got up to 2 minutes, then 2.5 minutes, and then COVID hit. And then I got an excuse. It's not good because the COVID certainly didn't take away.
They say we're going to eat a lot more, so I'm going to do that.
Right. I could certainly do planks in my own home. So, but I bought an excuse, which was terrible.
Well, and this is what's interesting, because step 5 is get a coach, the value of a coach. And if Scott in doing his planks or me in doing my running had somebody that I was accountable to other than just me, I might still be doing more running. Scott might still be working on his abs.
Absolutely.
Because he's got somebody who once a week or once a month is saying, all right, Scott, let's look at your progress and see how many times you've done your planks this and how long you're doing it for and what your improvement has been. So, Scott, what would you say are some of the values of having a sales coach? Let's talk about sales coaches specifically.
Well, I think, this relevance is most important. I think you need to have somebody that's relevant in today's marketplace. There are certain coaches that have created a system or wrote a book from 20 years ago, and they're selling the same system. I look at some of the stuff that I created 20 years ago, and if I were to pull it out and show it to an existing client, they would go, "This just doesn't sound right." And it's like, yeah, you're right. It's the market has changed, and a coach is somebody that's in touch with the market. I think also focusing on one person and with one goal, and that is for the client, for our salespeople that we work with to be able to decide what it is that they want. And I think we're more apt to do something for somebody else than we are ourselves. And we've got a coach, we're going to be held accountable. We don't want to embarrass ourselves. So we follow through on expectations. I think that's an important part.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that knowing that next week or tomorrow I'm going to meet with my coach
Mm-hmm.
and I've got to say what I did differently. It certainly is motivating, and to go back to that coach over and over again and say, "Well, I really didn't make any changes. I really didn't try this week. Well, I really didn't push myself." That little bit of just self embarrassment can help you get going. A couple of
Mm-hmm.
things that I think with a coach, they can see what we can't see. As Scott said, if you've got somebody who's relevant and in the heat of battle, they know what's going on in the sales world and they can see some things that you're doing that you just can't see. Obviously, golf coaches, tennis coaches, those professionals have coaches their whole lives to keep them on track. It's not just I need to improve, it's I need to stay on track long term. I think coaches challenge you to improve. As you said, if this person isn't pushing me, they're not doing me any good. They hold you to some level of accountability. And I think mostly they help you find new solutions and creative ideas because I can get stuck on things. I just don't know everything. So if I'm not having success with my phone calls, maybe somebody could listen into my phone calls for a while and then tell me what I could do better and where I'm missing the boat on those. So I think the value of the coach. And then step 6, obviously we need to act on the plan. Ever increasing challenges, monitor and measure. You've got to do something. So I think that's really the key. I'll just go over those six steps again real quickly. Do a needs assessment, set goals and prioritize them, find the resources you're going to use, develop a plan, use a coach, and then act on that plan. Scott, anything you want to add to that?
No, I really love the execution, and that's really the important part is, just go out and start today. And if you find that you're not able to do it alone, but you've got the commitment, maybe it would make sense to bring somebody else in and bring them into the conversation and share your commitment and goals with them and do it for a short period of time, just to start off with, just to start. And once you start, you're going to be able to look at something that's completely different than where you are right now. And the chances are that you're going to be looking up instead of looking at your shoes.
Yeah. And so just to talk about starting, I am offering a program I call the Jumpstart Sales Coaching. It's an introduction to sales coaching. It's limited. I won't take on too many of these clients because it's a little time consuming for me. But what it consists of is a 60-minute initial interview conversation where we do a needs assessment, we set some goals, we start to develop your professional development plan, and then 5 30-minute ongoing sessions where we monitor how you're doing, monitor your plan, talk about issues and challenges that you're facing. So that's a lot of coaching for $495. So it'll get you started. It's limited. If we decide we're going to do more coaching, we can talk about what that might cost. But this is an introductory program, and as we say, it's a jump start. So contact me via the website or via LinkedIn. Be glad to have a conversation with you about the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program.
Sounds like a great start, Bill, and it's certainly a reasonable program to get started. And again, you never know what you're going to have once you start doing something completely new and completely different. So
It doesn't
great.
take much. Doesn't take but one sale to cover
Yeah,
$495. So
yeah, so true. Our golden nugget today is the quality of a person's life is in direct proportion to their commitment to excellence, regardless of their chosen field of endeavor. Some people might recognize that. That is Vince Lombardi. And I thought that was very appropriate for the topic today because regardless of their chosen field of endeavor, there's a lot of things that talk about personal development, professional development that build our lives.
Right, right. Well, for me, the key word there is commitment to excellence. Do you have a
Yeah,
commitment to excellence, or do you have a commitment to just kind of getting by?
right.
And sometimes we all fall into that gutter of just getting by and just kind of doing things as we do them. But if you're going to commit to excellence, you're going to need to make some changes. It's a good step if you're listening to this podcast, but there's more that you can and should be doing.
Yeah, yeah. And it's not perfection, it's excellence. Strive for excellence, not perfection.
Yep. If you want to learn more, go to winningatselling.com. All the information is going to be there in our show notes. Winningatselling.com. This is episode 574.
Next week, no book club, but we will be doing chapters 10, 11, and 12 of part 3 of How to Win Friends and Influence People. Our guest is going to be John Baker, who wrote The Asking Formula. Definitely going to be a great show. So please subscribe and share this podcast with your colleagues on social media and other networks.
Go out and get better one skill at a time.
Joyful selling.